Welcome, everybody. Courtney can hear me, so I assume the rest of you are able to as well. My name is Jamie Lorio. I actually promise you I am a good 3.5, 4 feet away from this camera, even though my face is right up on there. So I apologize for that. But I am with the Department of Defense. I'm with an agency within the DoD. As you may have heard, if you were there for the graduation, I've been with the DoD for about 24, going on 25 years now. I'm an Army veteran. I'm a DoD civilian. I worked in operations for a long time, and now I'm focused in diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. That's my position now where I am. We've got a few thousand people at our site. I'm the advisor for the command staff there. With me is Pam Butler. Pam, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Pam Butler, and I serve as a DEI consultant with Jamie in the DoD organization. I'll just keep it short and sweet so we can get into the real reason why everybody's here. So thank you, welcome, and I'm glad that everybody is here.
And with us too is Courtney, is our tech support. So Courtney, thank you for everything you're doing. We had some changes this morning, so we're going off of a few technical jumps. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right, can everybody see that?
Looks good.
All right, sounds great, thanks. So, as I mentioned, my name's Jamie Lorio. We're going to talk today about employee resource groups. And at least from the perspective of Pam and my experience creating successful ERGs and BRG program, what's securing the link to diversity, right? One of the things that's incredibly important with regard to what we're doing is that we're looking through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And even within our own organization, the accessibility piece was just recently added on within the past month or so. Not that it was not existent, but by name, it wasn't there. And that was an important part to make sure that we were representing our persons with disabilities, especially from the employee resource groups. So what are we going to do today? We're going to focus on federal government aspect of this. I'm not sure exactly where everybody is from. I believe we're going to have federal government, state, local agencies down to the city level. If the one, I see Shauna Lewis is on there. I listened to your description, what you do for Los Angeles. I think that's fantastic. And I would imagine LA County is large enough that you probably fit in the line of a federal agency with regard to size. So this could be relevant there as well. For the rest of you, we want to make sure that we're trying to discuss things that are scalable. It doesn't mean that anything that's discussed here isn't possible at any one level or another. We also want this to be fluid. We want you to ask questions. If you have a question, if you can do the digital raise your hand or just jump on, I don't mind being interrupted. We're going to try to go about 20 minutes of presentation. Then we're going to have a breakout for about 20 minutes, where in the breakout rooms, you're going to be randomly placed with other participants. You'll have an opportunity to discuss some questions that we're going to have for you. And then we'll come back at the end of that, and we'll do a closeout for the rest of the presentation before we move into part 2, which will be tomorrow, and we hope that you come back for. So what are we going to look at today? This is going to be a little bit of policy, talk about the hands-on experience that I said Pam and I have. Looking at mission there, right? Inclusivity of the work environment. I mentioned it in one of the other earlier sessions. How do we try to find a workforce, to create a workforce that's reflective of modern America? And I really do believe in that. There's a lot to be said for an inclusive workforce that comes with diverse cultures and backgrounds, and not just only when we're talking about underrepresented demographics, but also experiential diversity. We all come in here with a lot of knowledge, a lot of background. It doesn't matter if you look like me or anybody else in our group here today. We have different experiences, and those experiences make a huge difference and provide an impact on what it is that we're able to accomplish for organizations. So Pam, I'll pass this over to you.
Okay, so for awareness purposes, this is just some of the federal laws that agencies are to abide by. And that does include the ERG and BRG programs, as you see in some of the definitions. We also want to make sure that you're aware that Management Directive 110 is also important because it defines the special emphasis programs within the EEO and DEI umbrella, which also is included in all of the ERG and BRG efforts that are going on. The federal mandates say that the protected groups will have groups that they can look to get information, that they have resources, etc. So these laws and executive orders help that to happen. Next slide, please. We do want you to pay attention to this executive order because it was established in August of 2011. It's one of the more recent laws that's been put into place. And we want to make sure that your agency has been working on this initiative. So by a show of hands, is everybody familiar with this policy, aware of it, and know how it's functioning? If you do, raise your hand. Or put in the chat if that works better for you, however that works. But this is the law, the executive order that says every agency must have an EEO diversity and inclusion effort going on. You can go to the next slide.
I'm looking at chat here just to see who's there. We do have a couple of people that are familiar with it. We've got NASA and NOAA represented here.
Awesome.
So when we're looking at this, before I get into these questions, what I haven't done yet is provide you a little background on how Pam and I are structured within our own organization. Originally, as far back as 2018, we were set up to where we had, well, we're working off of 9 or 8 employee resource groups, and I'll try to run them off here. Pam always corrects me. We've got a African American ERG, American Veterans ERG, Pride ERG, that's our LGBTQ plus community. We have PWD, Persons with Disabilities, Next Generations ERG. Who am I missing, Pam?
African American women.
African American women.
Yeah, and you said the Next Generation, right?
Right, and then within the past year, we've added on the American Indian and Alaskan Native. We also have an Islamic cultural, and we have brought in English as a second language. Now, not all of these are filled, but they are at least represented within the organization. One of the things that we do is we try to allow this to be grassroots, and if the workforce is interested in those topics or those demographics, then we provide them the opportunity to apply for leadership positions within those organizations or within those ERGs. And also along the lines of that structure, as of last year, we redesigned this to where we have what's called an inclusion council. That inclusion council comes with responsibilities that you're probably familiar with if you have ERGs, where you have a communications officer and an actions officer. You also have a chair and a co-chair, and those 4 officers are responsible for the overall, if you will, the day-to-day operations for the Inclusion Council. So think of them as the business resource group aspect of it that are there to support and underpin the employee resource groups. And along with that council, we also have the chair of each of those employee resource groups that we already named. And that overall responsibility is that is the representation for the workforce with regard to those demographics, whether underrepresented or otherwise. Those are the special interests that we have that reside within the organization. With that, we're looking at ways to support the community, all of the workforce, and go back to my prior statement with regard to what does it look like to be reflective of modern America. And that's one of the things where we take a look at who do we have, who do we represent, And then are we meeting the needs of those individuals? Or if those individuals aren't interested, then we have those discussions as well. So with those of you that are on, who is already working with ERGs, or maybe even has an inclusion council? But go ahead, Maria.
Yes, we do. We at NOAA, we have an overarching organization. It's called our Diversity and Inclusion Management Advisory Council. They oversee all of the ERGs. We have monthly meetings so we could discuss any issues that come up, what's going on between the ERGs, and actually right very shortly, the DIMAC at NOAA is going to be launching a beautiful website. I saw it before the launch, and it's graphically beautiful. It would be like a one-stop shop for all of our ERGs and our managers, and I think it will be very popular.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to have. It's definitely a good thing to have. Let me ask you this: are you on an open or a closed network?
Am I on what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Could anybody access that webpage?
It hasn't been launched yet, but Carla Ruzicka from NOAA, if I don't know, she's in this session because basically she spearheads it. That would probably be a question to ask her. I'll put her information in the chat. Okay. Because I know initially when we were establishing our websites, they were not public facing. And I think that there might be some steps that might be going forward to change some of that.
Well, okay, no, and that's good. And that's the reason I ask. Pam and I are actually on a network that you're never going to be able to access, right? So it's one of those things where I was just curious as to what the rest of the community would be able to share with public facing, right? So you hit that nail on the head.
Jamie, I think we're getting different opinions from the chat area. Some are saying that it is external, and some are saying no, that it is, so that it's on a closed. So there might be a couple of different opinions from the chat room participants as well.
I stand corrected.
Oh, there you go.
This is Linda Mulberger from Sandia Labs. I thought that they were asking about the link that I put in to the chat for Sandia Labs groups, and that is a public link on our external website.
Okay. And I'm not saying one way or the other is wrong. It really depends upon what your network security is. So with our different organizations, that's something that we do have to keep in mind. I think if you can have something that's publicly facing, I think that's fantastic. If anything, it's an incredible recruitment opportunity because I think it shows people outside of the organization that you are inclusive and you are looking to hire with diversity in mind. So that's an excellent thing. And then for the rest of us that might not be able to have a public facing website, still within the organization, it does benefit us in a way that we're able to show the workforce what we do or don't, or in this case, I'm going to say do support, and that we're there for the organizations or for the employees. Sorry. And Linda, did you have more that you wanted to talk about?
No, you had just asked, if we had ERGs already and how were they set up, and I just wanted to point out that I did put the link in the website to Sandia's external facing webpage that does have videos of our employee resource groups. We do have employee resource groups that cover the protected categories. We have what we call networking groups for those that are not protected. And then it even goes down to the level of common interest groups, which aren't really under the ERG umbrella, but that individuals across the labs get together and communicate, like for instance, Living Alone and Thriving. That's not an ERG group, but it's a common interest group.
Well, I like that idea, the common interest group, and that's something we might be able to unpackage later on. And I'm particularly interested in that. But so before we move off of this slide, keep these in mind. What are the reasons for establishing a BRG or an ERG program? Why is it important? Why should we care? Looking at a little deeper dive, are we doing this simply out of law? Does the workforce need this? What trends are we seeing? And I will say for those of you that are working in for the government, there is a there is a different cultural aspect, at least that I find, within the organization as compared to what corporate America is doing and corporate America's needs are. And then academia, I love engaging with because they try to tie that, they try to tie that all together so that we can all do something that is going to be useful for our personnel. Deeper dive on this, is it the right thing to do? Is that a discussion that you have? If you are thinking about creating ERGs within the government sector, is that part of your discussion? Is it the right thing to do? Are you only doing this out of compliance? And sometimes compliance is enough. I'm not going to deny that, right? And if you have any other reasons, think about that when we go to our breakout discussion. And how might that look? What is it that it is for each of you at your organizations that you're looking at in order to create these ERGs or BRGs?
One of the things that I want to go back to for a moment in the chat room, it asked about how our Inclusion Council is set up. What does the membership look like? Each of the ERGs has a representative that report to that and from that Inclusion Council. And then we also have senior representation on there as well. So it's a mixture of senior leaders. There are the ERG reps. We also have the uniqueness of having military representatives on our Inclusion Council to have it more robust, because that is the face of our workforce. We have both civilian, military, and the seniors all coming together for the larger site, so that we have full representation of all programs. For other purposes that you need to be considering as part of your ERG and BRG for your agency, what are the employee concerns that they want to bring up to the leadership levels? What is the morale of the employee? Do you have agency barriers? What is your culture that is currently going on in your agency, and is there a culture of change that needs to happen? Could it be beneficial by having ERGs to have say into what those changes would be? Are there other programs that you want to align with your ERGs and BRGs, and what would they be? And are the positions volunteer, or how much duty time? And this is always a big factor and something to consider. How much of their duty time are you going to allow the membership of the ERGs and BRGs to participate in the program? When we set up the original ERG program in 2009, it was extremely important to our director as well as to all the seniors that heard the buzz that we were in the process of doing this, that they allowed actual duty time for employees to participate in the activities, in the monthly meetings, etc. So I know other agencies say, no, you have to do that on your own time. So that is definitely an area that you want to look at and consider as you're looking at the purpose of your ERG, BRG. The next thing I want to talk about is, what does success look like? Do you have a number of ERGs that you want to have established? As Jamie mentioned, we now have 11 ERGs at our location. We had 8 to start with in 2018. Before that, at headquarters, they didn't have as many to start with, and it's evolved over the years and gotten larger and larger. So what are those opportunities for growth, and what does that look like? What are those tangible outcomes and intangible outcomes? What are the desired outcomes by the leadership? What do the leaders want to see happen in these ERGs? How do you see the ERGs and BRGs interacting with your agencies? Are they going to stay only within your agency, or are they going to network across federal government into other agencies? For example, some of our folks not only work with our specific agency, but they go to the intelligence community, or they go to DOD activities, or they go to the larger federal agencies to network, to see what's going on, to get ideas, to bounce off challenges, to see how others are working those, etc. And another important area to consider is, will the ERG sunset after a period of success? And how is that going to be determined? Should you determine that upfront so everybody knows when the end is near? Or is it something that you'll evolve over time? What does that plan look like that you're putting into place? Because that's important for folks to know. The next thing we want to look at are reporting requirements. Next slide, please. There we go. How will and does the BRG and ERG align with your agency's strategic plan? Do you know what your agency's strategic plan is? What office has that oversight for the ERGs and BRGs? In some agencies, I know Human Resource Office has that responsibility. In other agencies, the EEO or diversity offices have that responsibility. And in still other agencies, I know there are joint efforts where both HR and EEO have a obligation to report up to the director as to what is going on in those groups. So do you know where that oversight lies? How do you expect the ERG and BRG efforts to be measured? And what are you going to measure? What are you looking for as that end result? Which takes us back to one of the previous slides. And then who will have the responsibility to provide the reporting info to the agency and beyond? For those of you in the federal government, you know all of our reporting requirements. We have the MD 715 along with multiple of others. There's IC requirements for the intelligence community. There are requirements for EEOC. There's requirements for Congress. Who has that responsibility, and are they gaining and getting the information, if you already have an ERG or BRG represented, that they have a full picture that they're providing to Congress or to those federal agencies with oversight about the agency that you're representing? Sometimes the ERG and BRG information was missed and has been missed because whoever had that responsibility didn't even know that the ERG or BRG was in existence. So that's something to also consider and keep into place. And also make sure that you have the reporting activities required from the ERG and BRG. You may want to do that instead of just annually. You know, I don't remember what I did last October, but if you do it quarterly, you can build on that report every quarter and then submit it as a full end of year report. And it saves a lot of headaches for everybody. So that's just my tip to offer, is to do a quarterly report. And that also lets you look at what you're measuring, and it lets you see if you're needing to stay on track and you've got full momentum, or if you may need to adjust that track a little bit and head down a different path because of whatever obstacles you may have been met with. So going on from there, I'm going to turn it back over to Jamie for breakout sessions.
Ooh. Back up. There we go. Hey, okay, so before we let you go to breakout sessions, I think this is going to work out well, where we're going to give you 20 minutes for a breakout. We'll keep an eye out on time if it looks like 20 minutes is too long, but Pam and I have just given you a lot of information. We recognize that, a lot of questions to think about. Before we move over, I do want to bring out a couple of things that were placed into the chat, going all the way back to David, if I can find it. Oh, okay. Yeah, so David, this is one of the things that I actually briefed. As Pam mentioned, we have the majority of workforce is military, but we've got a large civilian leadership cadre, that, you know, including ourselves. So one of the things that we do talk about when it comes to not just the military members, but our civilians alike, is that diversity and inclusion directly feed into mission success, right? Now, I'm not saying that you have to think of a military mission to think of mission success. We all have missions, or different organizations have mission statements, and we've got strategies and goals that we're trying to achieve. And without that diversity and the inclusivity of the diverse workforce, our missions are never going to be as successful as they could. And that's something that you caught my attention with that and want to highlight and agree. I do agree with that. Without what we're talking about, without trying to make sure that everybody has a voice, we're missing out. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're going to miss out in some capacity. There was something else that came up, and that was Maria. You had mentioned about the not agreeing. Oh, okay. You have two things here that I want to talk about. The co-chairs, full-time, the chair and co-chair positions being full-time positions. And these are things that y'all can talk about in the breakout session. That I will say that is a point of discussion that I spent the past year on with USC going through their ERG program. If you go through that program, the ability to sit there and speak to your corporate counterparts, they provide a perspective that we often don't have within the government, right? And now we'll tell you this, even from their side, you're not going to find many that are full-time paid employee resource group leaders. We talk about recognition for employee resource group leaders. How do you keep people motivated? For us, speaking for Pam and I, we've had time off awards and limited cash awards available to us to provide to employees. That does help, but we don't want it to be the only reason that an individual focuses on employee resource groups. But that being said, you also don't want people to feel as if they're being taken advantage of. You want to make sure that you do provide them some recognition. Go ahead, Maria.
Okay, what about, and I'm asking because I think our ERGs do a tremendous job. Why is it that people at other agencies will not put them in for their administrators awards? That, to me, that would demonstrate management's commitment, its continuing support, and in terms of full-time positions, we have a number of initiatives, as I'm sure you all know, that many of the people that work in this field, if they devote, if they complete every tasker they could get, it would be full-time. So, and what do you have in terms of succession planning? If you think your management doesn't take it seriously, doesn't recognize it seriously, doesn't promote them seriously, and plan for succession planning, I agree with David, it'll all fail. You need to have continuity and consistency.
Okay.
Maria, I agree that with some of the agencies, they don't realize, in all honesty, that the employee could receive an administrative award and recognition. To go back to your very first statement about why don't they put them in for an admin award. Some don't realize could do that. So it's upon all of us to ensure that when we go back to our agencies to investigate that further and then announce it out to the workforce that that's an option. Because if folks don't know, they may say, well, there's nothing out there. There's no way that I can acknowledge them. There's no way I can support them. But if they're made aware of that type of an award exists at your particular agency, you might see a difference.
Okay. Yeah, we put our ERG in for an administrator's award, and somehow it didn't make it through the budget process. And we have, and this is a shout out to the other NOAA ERGs on this phone. You have people that are 2-time award winners that have never been recognized, and that needs to change.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. I can tell you, even within the past month, we have had discussions with our senior executives about the waning interest of some who have historically supported the ERGs. And I said, the best way for me to put this to you is that you put all of the people you are promoting and recognizing in one hand, and you put your ERG leaders in another hand. To listen overlap, you've answered your question. So there's opportunity in this space, and it really is up to the senior executives. So we continue to go on time. I wanted to hit. Now I will just leave it at that. So what I'm going to ask now, I told you 20 minutes, I lied to you. Now I'm just going to give you 15 minutes. But take what you've heard within this discussion. It was great discussion, and have it with all of you who are either well entrenched in ERGs or you're trying to develop them on your own. And when we come back after 15 or so minutes, we'll have an out brief that you're welcome, Maria. You'll have an out brief that we'll be able to hear from the groups, those that we have time for, and then we can definitely follow up later on if anybody wants to reach out directly. In response, Shauna, you sent me a private. Yes, the answer is yes. And I would say that for the rest of you, if you do want information from us, please reach out through either Jennifer Sparks or Teresa Wellborn, and they'll be able to come get in touch with us directly. So right now, Courtney, if you want to break everybody out. Okay, so I think we have everybody back.
Hey, got know people. All right.
Nice.
Hey, Tom.
More of you are even showing your faces. I appreciate that. Oh, CJ, you there?
Oh, I'm praying mine's not on the dartboard by now.
So I hope everybody enjoyed the discussion. So the return and report section here, since we didn't assign breakout leaders, I'll just ask if somebody wants to, if somebody's willing to put their hand up and speak about what they discussed in their room. You know, I think everybody would benefit from hearing that. So if you just want to put your hand up, I can call on somebody, or if you just want to start speaking, feel free to do that too.
I'll go ahead. In our breakout room, Linda, Yadira, Monica, and I had an opportunity to talk about some of the barriers that we've experienced, and that some of the suggestions that we had is that our organizations, our agencies, tie equity and ERGs to our leadership's performance standards to make it, give it the authority and the accountability that we've been talking about today in our various sessions, and how important it is for us to, as we heard earlier, show our external stakeholders what we're doing, be public facing, as we saw that great comment in the chat, so that they understand here at Child Support has a bad rap historically because we're punitive. We're taking people's money, we're dealing with families, and we're really trying to rebrand and build relationships in our communities and negotiate with families and not be so punitive, even though we have a job to do. But it starts from the inside and build employee morale. If you're taking people's money and you're dealing with children, families, and those issues, many times our morale is low because our customers are hurting and they're calling us and they're expressing that, and that translates into low morale for our workforce. So our ERGs have been a vehicle that we've been using to create belonging, improve morale, provide professional development opportunities, succession planning, and improving the workplace culture, and letting all of our stakeholders know that we're doing something new here at Child Support, which mirrors what we're doing here in LA County, which is becoming a national model for equity here in the nation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, and I think that's excellent. And I like that you're recognizing that the ERGs can play a role in the morale of the workforce, right? I'm definitely not trying to compare work roles. I can't imagine what it would be like working child support and child issues, because I think that would be very difficult. So I respect what you do. From the perspective that Pam and I come in, when you think of the Department of Defense and what we've been focused on for the past couple of decades, that too wears on employees, right? So you have to think of ways, how do you help the employees? How do you support them? And how do you show that you're there for them? And the employee resource groups can play a role in that. But management does have a responsibility when you talk about accountability on that, especially for individuals. I'm going to give it a different slant. So even where we are, we do have a diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility performance objective for each civilian employee. Now that, though, I'm going to be open and honest about, and I'll say that it is as strong as middle management is willing to support it, right? So that's something that you have to think about. No matter where you are, what agencies we work with, there can be a disparity in that. You can create a performance objective that's a standard for employees to work against, but if it's just going to be a check the box for middle management, that, you know, you're probably not going to hit the mark. Now, your hope, though, is that employees do see it and think about it, and it provides you opportunity for culture change later on. But it is something that's worth pursuing if you don't have it, but there are going to be challenges along the way. Anybody else have anything?
Well, if
CJ, my
somebody would
friend,
like
I'm looking
to.
right at you.
Yeah,
Okay, CJ, you go ahead.
yeah, I was not scribing for our group, but one of the things that we talked about, Jamie, was to your point of the expectation of being allowed to participate in the ERGs, irrespective of the demands of your job, and not forcing that commitment to be after hours, but to have it be embraced in the normal working hours of the day, just because the value of the ERGs does support the culture, it does support retention, it does draw employees into topics and issues that will enhance their experience. So that was one of our topics, but then I want to turn it over to someone else in our group. Who wants to talk?
Yeah, this is Tom Hamir from NOAA. Yeah, we have quite an interesting group. We have Derek Adogle from Ghana, who joined us here to learn more about what we're doing in terms of diversity and inclusion and how he might be able to bring it home in terms of promoting women in the workplace and changing the mining workplace environment in Ghana. So that was great to hear about him joining us. Of course, CJ Kasuto provided insights on Central Square's initiatives. And basically, Sabrina asked for basically some help or guidance on how other ERGs from different agencies might be able to help her effort at the National Science Foundation. Essentially, the topic of discussion revolved around sharing best practices and helping each other and identifying key issues that we need to work on, the common issues that we need to work on as ERGs, no matter whether you're from one agency or another.
Yeah, so if I heard you correctly, what I am hearing is that you've got intersectionality going on, and your outcomes are actually external. You're having influence within a community, not just internal to your own organization, but the support that the organization provides. You're making an impact. In this case, you say Ghana. That within that atmosphere, there is a change in the environment. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's both. With respect to Ghana, we're basically extending what we're learning here to other countries. But for the rest of us, US-based, we're looking at internal processes and conditions and how we can help each other better improve the way we run ERGs and the way we share our expertise to our basically target clientele.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm with you. So yeah, that's an excellent process improvement. You know, you have the challenge there. You're looking at the intersectionality between employee resource groups, and you're looking to provide your experience from one to experience of another, and then build upon that. And as you work across, you work across organizations, you better enable everybody in that place, right? So that if you think about earlier this morning, if you were in the original discussions that were talking about networking, that's your networking example right there, right? Especially if you have employees that are trying to build and learn within the organization itself. The ERGs have an opportunity to really express or tie those networks together. And those of you that are ERG leaders that may have been with your organizations for a long period of time, you may have networks internal to your organization that you know, and you're able to pick an individual from an employee resource group and say, here's a leader over here. It doesn't even have to be an ERG leader in this case. It could be an ally or a champion or an executive. and say, here's some of your networking opportunity where you can have discussions that are going to be able to build upon what you're doing over here with regard to one employee resource group and the processes you take there that can be applied to anywhere else in the organization or another employee resource group. And you find that mission success long term. So no, I appreciate you sharing that. So we are actually at time. I don't want to just take away from anybody. If anybody had anything else that they wanted to share, I want to give you an opportunity here. I might drive Courtney a little nuts, but
no worries, that's okay.
One question I want to answer that came earlier on was about sharing examples of a quarterly report. It can be as simple as somebody putting in a Word document with what they've accomplished for the last 3 months. It does not have to be in a certain format or a certain drive. You want to capture that information, and then you can take that information and put it on whatever reporting mechanism that you have to comply with for the annual reports. But at the same time, you're also able to provide that information to your command or to your leadership on a progress report about, hey, look at us, keep us in mind, see the great things that we're doing, to be able to keep that momentum going from the senior leaders as well as with the employees. And it's also an opportunity for you to recognize your employees at those times too. You don't have to wait for an annual cycle. You can always acknowledge the work that they're doing as they're doing it each quarter, so that that builds more momentum and more interest among the workforce for others to get involved and join and participate in those activities as well. So I hope that helps to answer that question. If you have others, please let us know.
so with that, I just want to thank everybody for your time. I really do appreciate that you came to this. We are going to have a part 2 discussion tomorrow. I can't remember offhand what time, but it's in the afternoon. And then on Thursday, say again?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. And then Thursday, Friday, I will be in Florida. If anybody else is there and you want to get together and meet, we can discuss any of this further. I am more than happy to. That's part of the networking opportunities too that I'm looking for out of this. So we can continue to learn and grow. But thanks for everybody being here. Thanks for the efforts that you're putting forth with your organizations. Employee resource groups are important. And they really do make a difference. They make a difference for individuals. And if we can just make a difference for one person, we can start to build on that and find that mission success. So thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.